I'm Jennifer Goulet, President and CEO of ArtServe Michigan, the statewide advocacy organization leading advocacy for arts culture, arts education, and the power of the creative industries to change people and places all across our incredible state of Michigan. And I want to thank each of you for joining us on a late Friday afternoon before what I'm sure is going to be a relaxing weekend that's ahead. We have a great group of people assembled together in this room today, leaders of our arts and cultural institutions, arts educators, artists, creative industries leaders, and members of our foundation community, passionate arts advocates all. And we're honored today to have with us Bob Lynch, President and CEO of Americans for the Arts, our national arts advocacy peer and champion, to join us today for a conversation about the landscape for the arts, culture, and creativity at the federal level. And joining Bob today is Maura Walker, APTA's Chief Operating Officer. Give a wave. Bob and Maura, we just welcome you to Detroit and thank you for spending this time with us today. We especially thank you for squeezing in this time with what is ahead, which promises to be quite a busy weekend for you with your attendance at the SphinxCon Summit this weekend. Hopefully many of you are aware and many of you are also attending this new summit that's being led by Aaron Dworkin, one of our ArtServe board members, and the Sphinx organization that is bringing an amazing group of state, national, and international leaders together to engage in dialogue about the critical importance of strengthening and promoting cultural diversity in the performing arts. And for those of you that are going, we promise we're going to get you out in time so you have a break before you get there for the 6 o'clock opening session. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank our host partners for today's gathering, the Detroit Creative Quarter Center and the Detroit Institute of Arts. Thank you, Matt Clayson, sitting there in a green sweater in the back of the room, and Anne-Marie Erickson from the CIA. We appreciate your generous support and your gracious hospitality today. And Anne-Marie did want to make a special note that she has passes for any of you that would like to spend time sometime this weekend coming back and taking some time here at the Art Institute. The DIA is open tonight until 10 o'clock for the Friday evening event, so if you have a chance to stay and make an evening of it, please do. Thanks, Anne-Marie. And I think as we can all appreciate, this has been quite a challenging and yet exciting time of creating opportunity for Michigan's creative sector. And I just want to give a quick opportunity to thank the amazing people and leaders that I get the privilege of working alongside in these efforts. We have a number of our board members here today, Randy Paschke, Deborah Flegel, Deborah Pollack, and a few more may yet be joining us this afternoon. Our board chair, Joan Krause from Grand Rapids, sends her regrets. She had an important granddaughter birthday celebration today and a trip to Vancouver tomorrow and was having difficulty squeezing a trip to Detroit in. And then very quickly, a quick shout out to our amazing ArtServe staff team. Mike Latvis, who will be sharing some of our latest Creative State Michigan findings today, our Director of Public Policy. Cezanne Charles, our Director of Creative Industries, Ashley Arter, who, there she is, our Programs Coordinator, Sarah Nesbitt, our Communications Coordinator, has been roving about with her camera, and you met April Liu, our Office Manager, in the hallway. They're just an amazing, mighty team doing incredible work for all of you across the state. I'm also pleased to recognize a few representatives that we have here today from the Michigan Council for the Arts and Cultural Affairs. Deanne Nixon and Maud Lyon are members of the council, and Allison Loveday is here from the council staff, so thank you for joining us today. I think it's safe to say that these are indeed tumultuous times for our country, facing no small issues in the midst of what is clearly a quite divisive political climate and continued economic pressures. And today we want to focus a little bit about how our nation's investment in arts and culture and our cultural assets is going to be impacted by that. How can we turn the growing evidence that the arts, culture, and creative industries are a growth sector to strategic purpose? And what more can we do individually and collectively to maximize strategic advantage for the sector? And I can't think of anybody better to put this into perspective for us than Bob Lynch. And Bob brings more than 30 years of experience in the arts industry to his leadership role as president and CEO of Americans for the Arts, and serves as a leading voice for the arts across the U.S. and beyond. As former executive director of the National Assembly of Local Arts Agencies, he led that organization's successful merger with the American Council for the Arts to form Americans for the Arts back in 1996. And under his 26-year tenure, AFTA's services and membership have grown 50-fold, and he guided mergers that also brought in the voices of the Arts and Business Council and the Business Committee for the Arts into Americans for the Arts, further unifying that voice for the arts nationally. He created the Americans for the Arts Action Fund, which is probably something Bob would like to get you all involved in. And if you do, you have to also get involved in ArtServe's Action Fund. And its connected political action committee to guide and shape arts-friendly public policy, engage citizens across the country as effective advocates for the critical importance of arts and arts education across our country. We know that Bob works tirelessly in strengthening AFTA's role as a national leader in advocating, documenting, and articulating the essential role that the arts, culture, and creative industries play in our nation's economy and in service to our citizens and our communities. I could go on, but I won't. So please join me in welcoming Bob Lynch.
Thank you all so much. It's not often that I'm asked to give a 2-hour lecture on cultural policy on a Friday afternoon, and I understand from Jennifer that won't be happening today. So, but in the minutes that we have together, I have some ideas that I'd love to just share with you. I was coming in for the Sphinx conference, and I'll be here for the next 3 days, and let Jennifer know that I'd love to just connect with what I thought would be a staff person or two that might be around, and her energy allows that to be shared to such a larger group, which is wonderful. Now, this is my very favorite forum to speak. No charts, no slides. This is the only slide that I have. So that I can speak to you unencumbered by accuracy or fact, and then slip back to the nation's capital, as is our custom. But let me just say a few words. I want to just shout out to a few people. Jennifer, of course, and all the team from ArtServe Michigan. And Masco, the business, is here, and Cheryl is here. Cheryl Phillips from Masco, and our business committee for the arts that was mentioned has honored that business twice in the last years. We do an annual honoring event for business leaders because private sector support for the arts in America is such a huge component of what it is the puzzle for art support in America. Maud Lyon is here, and I think Jennifer Clay is here, both on our private sector council. Sue, I was talking to Sue earlier, who's on our public art committee, who's also here. And I think that what's great for us is that there's a network of people who we work with in different ways here in Detroit and in Michigan, part of the national picture to advance the cause, the very broad cause of support for the arts in America. I also want to congratulate you. I know that the governor and the legislature put in an increase, put forward an increase this year, 2 years in a row, unprecedented, or not at least for a long, long time. That's really exciting, and that kind of momentum is what we want to see happen in states all across the country. I want to congratulate you on this terrific report, which you'll be hearing about, not from me, but the kinds of data and the way it's laid out in this report is exactly the way leaders who are not from our sector need to see it, need to be able to digest it so that they can make decisions that affect positive change, whether it's public or private. So you've heard that I have been at Americans for the Arts for 27 years. It was called the National Assembly of Local Arts Agencies. I get to go out all around the country and do wonderful things like this, and the operation keeps going on because Mara Walker, whose name was mentioned, is here. There she is, who's also been with us for 20 years. We never let her out of the office. She's out this weekend, and it's wonderful to have that teamwork here. Let me, in case anybody doesn't know what Americans for the Arts is, I want to just say a word about Americans for the Arts and the kind of system that we've set up to do the work that I'm to talk about, the federal support, the federal advancement, or the advancement of just money for the arts in America. So Americans for the Arts is, interestingly, 3 organizations. It is a 501c3 organization, Americans for the Arts, and that is a service organization to thousands of professional members. But then it is the Americans for the Arts Action Fund, which is what's called a 501c4 organization, and it allows us to spend 100% of that money on advocacy. And then the third thing is it is a political action committee, a PAC, which allows us to get into electoral politics and give donations directly to political candidates at the federal congressional level. It's important for us to be able to have all 3 of those pathways. And so what I'm talking about here today, and the reports that I'm giving you, come from all 3 of those different areas. We're 53 years old as an organization. In 1960, the 100 existing local arts councils in America and the 4 existing state arts councils in America, and we have the wonderful Michigan State Arts Council represented here. But there were only 4 in 1960. And our organization came into being and was charged with 3 things. Let's get more local arts agencies out there, let's create a state arts council in every state, and let's create a national arts council. And it was through advocacy and lobbying work of people from a long time ago that our organization was able to be the catalyst that created the National Endowment for the Arts 45 years ago. And then one of the things that happened, and this is just an important part of policy knowledge that people need to know, is that in the middle of the night, as the negotiations were going on for the creation of the National Endowment for the Arts, a paragraph was slipped into the authorizing language. And that paragraph said, if any state had a state arts council, they could get matching money from the new National Endowment for the Arts. And so in 1964, there were 4 state arts councils. In 1966, there were 50 state arts councils. And so that was our early and our original work. And so what we spend our money on to advance advocacy, we spend it in 7 areas. We spend it on research, and some of you may have, and it's a particular kind of research. It's like this. It's action-oriented research that is designed to get something done. So our own economic impact study nationally is an example of that. We do professional training, some 200 events in the course of the year to get the 3,000 local arts agencies that we have today from that original 100 trained and ready to do whatever they need to do to advance the arts in the local community. We do a kind of a leadership development work to try to come up with a core of leaders. We were just talking about the kind of people that we're able to get, whether it's Robert Redford or Yo-Yo Ma or Alec Baldwin or Billy Taylor or Chuck D. All these people who help us with the lobbying work, well, it's years of recruiting them and getting to know them and building up trust. And so events in the leadership area is part of that. And then strategic partnerships. Strategic partnerships. We at Americans for the Arts ask who has the money. And then we find out what that national organization is. So mayors in America give out $3 billion a year to the arts. So we want to get to know the U.S. Conference of Mayors and have a partnership with them. Corporate leaders are giving out roughly $4 billion a year to the arts in America. So we have a partnership with the Conference Board, the national organization where all corporate leaders go for their information. And a variety of other strategic partnerships. We try to create visibility for the concept of the power and the value of the arts. We do it in a variety of ways, but one is through recognition awards. Awards to great businesses, like we do with the Business Committee for the Arts, the BCA 10. Just last week, 2 weeks ago, at the U.S. Conference of Mayors conference, in front of 1,000 mayors, we gave an award to a governor, because all the mayors want to be a governor. And so Governor O'Malley from Maryland, former mayor of Baltimore, we gave an award to the mayor of New Orleans, a big city, to the mayor of Santa Fe, and then an award to John Legend, fabulous musician, and that allows the arts again to be raised in the consciousness of the people that are there. And then the last two things of the 7, direct private sector advocacy and communication, and finally, public sector communication that leads to the federal question that I've been asked to talk about today. And on the public sector front, in our action fund, we now have 250,000 citizen activists who are free members, and or actually they don't know they're members, they think they're members. We have 250,000 people that we can communicate to electronically because we have them in a database, 40,000 of whom are actual free members. We don't charge. But that body of people is what allows us to work on advocating. So I look at this as a quadrangulation. If you think about what I've just said, you have a decision maker in the middle. Let's say it was former Mayor Daley of Chicago. That decision maker is in the middle. We're hoping that the professional organizations, the 3,000 that we have, are communicating that they want to see more support from the mayor. And then you see at the citizen activist level, groups of individual citizen activist groups led by ArtServe, led by local arts advocacy. When the mayor is thinking that he's heard enough from the arts organizations, all of a sudden he's hearing from citizens. The mayor escapes to Washington, D.C. to come to the U.S. Conference of Mayors conference. What happens? There's awards on stage, there's policy committees happening, and then he comes home tired, he goes home at night, and Maggie Daley is one of our individual leaders, is hammering him when he comes home. And so that quadrangulation, I think, is a strategy at the national level with us, with a group like ArtServe, and at the local level that allows us to move the dime forward. So with what's ahead on the federal front, let me just talk about what we just went through. So one of the things that Americans for the Arts does every 4 years is to, with our action fund, work on the political campaigns. We go to 12 states where primaries are happening, and we go and talk to Republican candidates and Republican leadership groups and Democratic candidates and Democratic leadership groups, and then we bring the dialogue to the annual conventions of both the presidential conventions of both the Democrat and Republican Party. So at the Democrat convention this year, we had a forum for 300 people, and we had Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State, and the former Secretary of Education, Richard Riley, both there with a group of a dozen people leading a dialogue that got us 300 delegates to think about the arts in a different way and possibly do something. At the Republican convention, we got our friend Mike Huckabee to come and lead it. We got the governor of Utah, who's the incoming chair of the Republican Governors Association, and the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, who's the incoming chair of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, another Republican, to make the case for the arts. And he was absolutely fascinating to me because he had the most compelling story. He talked about in Mesa when budget cut time was coming and he was having open forums and he didn't want to cut the arts. People were saying that we've got a lot of problems here with crime. The chief of police came forward and said, take the money for the arts out of my budget because the arts are keeping my police officers alive. Reducing crime rates and so on. And so those are the kinds of things that we're looking for to get as we go into laying the landscape for federal, state, or local government money. The other thing that we did was polls of the candidates to find out what the candidates actually thought. We did it early when there were many candidates, but at the end, some of you who are members would have gotten this analysis. And the analysis was all of the things that the Democratic Barack Obama candidate is feeling about arts issues, and all of the things that Mitt Romney was thinking about the arts issues. What's interesting about this is that we saw a dramatic change even in 4 years. On these half dozen questions, 8 or so questions here, the first thing was that 4 years ago with John McCain, half of the questions that John McCain was answering were either positive about the arts or arts education or unknown. 4 years later, almost everything except charitable giving was negative on the Republican candidate side and positive on the Democratic candidate side. Both of them were negative on charitable giving. I'll come to that in a second. One of the things that came out of the Democratic convention for us was a statement, a policy statement, about valuing the arts that the Democratic Party, now the party in power, federally at least, believed in. And that was a hugely important platform statement for us, essentially reaffirming in this statement, reaffirming that they're committed to continuing the policies and programs in the arts and in economic development for the arts, like the National Endowment for the Arts, the Humanities, and art education programs for art and music advancement. That's gold for us because we can keep coming back to it in reference. So let me take a look at a couple of things that are happening federally right now. We're in a time of flux. You all see it, but it affects everything that I'm going to talk about because we're seeing cabinet positions that we've worked on for 4 years universally almost changing. Department of Transportation, Department of Commerce, Department of Interior. So one of the things that happens is that we have to start over all the time. There's a little bit of platform there, but there's new players and new agendas. And so that's the first thing. The cultural agency chairs, the humanities is staying, but the National Endowment for the Arts is changing. And that will be my 13th chair of the National Endowment for the Arts, either a chair or an acting chair that I've worked with in my last 27 years. And I can tell you that each one of them has wanted to put their personal imprint onto the agency, different programs slightly. So we'll see how that works right there. But it is most importantly, I think, an opportunity for President Obama to carry through on the pledges that he made in 2008. In 2008, President Obama put forward the most positive and aggressive arts agenda that we've ever seen. A lot of the things were stymied along the way. Now is an opportunity, and you can see him right now being much more aggressive on issues that he believes in. Leadership can happen at that level, and we're going to push hard on that front. I won't go into all of the changes in the House and the Senate, but there is a kind of a stasis in art support, or even a slight erosion in the House side. Some of our very moderate Republican friends lost or left, and people who have replaced them, even though there's more Democrats in the House right now, people who have replaced those moderate Republicans are not very favorably looking on our arts issues, unless we're able to take the time to educate them. And if we're able to take the time to educate them, all of a sudden they discover that things that they care about, the arts care about too. Youth at risk, crime, job creation, economic development, community revitalization. When we are able to tie our issues to their issues, it makes a very, very huge difference. There are two big tools that we have in Congress, the Congressional Arts Caucus and the Senate Arts Caucus. Both of them are things that we've built over the years, and we maintain them because they don't have a budget. In the Congressional Arts Caucus, 37 members were lost to election results. So we have 152 as of this writing. These are people that we can count on, not only to vote the way we want, but to advocate the way we want. On the Senate Cultural Caucus, the caucus was at 37 members, and it's dipped to 32 members. So it's there's a little bit of building that we have to do on that front. So what are we doing all this building for and working with them at the federal level? Well, there are 9 things that we follow aggressively on Capitol Hill. Yesterday, for example, we were up there for 2 of them. Yesterday, there was a hearing by the House Ways and Means Committee on the idea of charitable deduction, tax charitable deduction. And so we brought in a witness, a billionaire who is very generous to the arts, Earl Mack, former chair of the New York State Arts Council, who was willing to say he'd give less if charitable deduction was eliminated. Very compelling. And former ambassador to Finland. And so we were up there on the Hill with a number of other witnesses to make sure the arts were at the table. But in the next room, another caucus was being launched that we had the ability to help create. And that has to do with a completely different issue, arts education. A caucus was created that is called the STEAM caucus. And so we all know that there's a big emphasis on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And people have been making the case that if you add the arts, you get STEAM. But now there's a STEAM caucus on Capitol Hill, which will hold hearings on that. And so we were up there on the Hill for that. So when I look at the issues, I see 5 of them that are specifically about money from appropriations, meaning more money for the National Endowment for the Arts, more money for the Department of Education, more money for the State Department for Arts Exchange, more money for the Institute for Museum and Library Services, the museum part, and keep the money for broadcasting that goes to NPR and PBS. So there are those 5, and I'm happy to go into detail on them, that we're pushing at and looking at in a very hard way. And then the 4 that are more policy issues, but money's at the end of the road for all of these, is that this year we believe that the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is called No Child Left Behind, is going to happen. We think it's going to happen. There's some language in there that's not helpful to the arts for the appropriation of arts education money. We're going to be working with a big coalition to try to change that. Charitable giving, I've already mentioned. The idea of keeping charitable giving flowing so that people can give money to the arts. And the arts, interestingly, have a disproportionate share of high-end donors. And the high-end donors are the ones that are more likely to be curbing what they give. And so it's very important for us to work on that issue. The idea of making it easier for artists to get visas to come to our country when you want to produce them. And then finally, the Artist Museum Partnership Act. And that's an interesting one. It means that if somebody here has a $100,000 painting and they want to donate it to a museum, they get a full charitable deduction for that $100,000. But if an artist has the same $100,000 painting and they donate it, they are only able to get the value of the paint and the canvas to be able to deduct. And so we are working on that one as well. So those are the 9 areas that we're working on. And does it make a difference? Well, the answer is yes. And you just take a look at some things like on the visa front. Not on the visa front, but on the Department of State front. In 2003, there was $2 million, pathetic, that was being used for international cultural exchange. And in 2010, there was $11.5 million for it. Now, that's still pathetic, but it is 5 or 6 times what was there before, and it only happens because of the actions of people like you here in the room, pushing on those fronts. We have an interesting situation right now with the National Endowment for the Arts, and I'll just throw it out just in terms of history. In 1992, the most money for the National Endowment for the Arts that was appropriated in its history was there, $176 million in 1992. And it took, since our organization pushed to have it created in 1965 until 1992 to get that amount of money. Then a big problem occurred with arts being called pornographic or blasphemous, and that created basically dialogue that was designed by people who wanted to see budget cuts to cut the budget, and they were successful. They weren't successful in eliminating it because it was not eliminated, but they were successful in cutting it by 40%, so that in the year 2000 it was $97 million. So $176 million to $97 million. And sadly, that was a victory because it was not zero. And it took us all these years until 2010 to get it up back to $167.5 million. And that's good news. But interestingly, you have to watch all fronts, because in that year, we had the House with us, even though it was largely Republican. We had the Democratic Senate with us, and out of the blue, the president put in a $20 million cut. The president. And so we look at all fronts and all parties and look at all times to try to figure out how we can keep people thinking positively, be our friends on these issues. And the good news is that the president is now calling for a $7 million increase this year. So does it work? Absolutely. It takes a lot of work, though, to be working on all these fronts. Now, one of the tools that we have besides National Arts Advocacy Day, which is going to be on the first week of April, first Monday in April, Yo-Yo Ma speaking at the Kennedy Center in the evening, and then the next day, people like you coming from all across the country going up onto Capitol Hill. That's one kind of thing that advances our cause. The 250,000 members of Americans for the Arts or Michigan ArtServe working together, writing letters, sending emails, that's part of our cause. But then there's the third thing I talked about, and that's the PAC, the Political Action Committee. And we were able this year to give out, to raise $100,000, to give out $65,000 to 91 gifts, 77 candidates, 90% of those candidates won. So we have a very good core of closely connected folks right now, and 1/3 of them were Republicans. So it's a bipartisan effort. We also have $100,000 in the bank for that PAC. Hard money to raise because nobody can give more than $5,000, but we have $100,000 in the bank for this election cycle that's up and running right now. And if you want to see more about that, there's a handout outside this, which is the newsletter that anybody who is a member of the Action Fund gets. And it lays out the timeline of all the things that happened with the presidential campaign, and then gives at the end a list of everybody who got a PAC gift, including Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters here in this state. So with that, there's a lot more to talk about, but I won't talk about it because I was supposed to talk for about 25 minutes, and that's up. I will say that I definitely believe that when you look at the arts in America, today, you add up the budgets of all of the arts organizations, and it's about $61 billion. 60% of that $61 billion comes from earned income. We're small businesses. We're making our own way. 40% comes from charitable giving, with a chunk of it, about 10% from government, federal, state, and local, and 30% from the private sector, corporate, foundation, and mostly individual. Our collective job, I think, is to work on all of those fronts. Earn our way, know how to market better, know how to lobby and advocate for the public money, know how to make sure that we're encouraging the business leaders and the foundation leaders to think about the arts, as well as all of the other things that they have to think about. And if we do that, my hope is that what we get as return on investment at the end of the day is a better child, a better town, a better nation, a better world. Thank you.